Okay, then in this video we'll talk about classes. So let's first of all clarify what a class is. Well, a class is a code template which you can use for creating objects. And if you would like to create a class, you should use a keyword called class. So let's take a look into class creation using a very basic example. So as I said, you should use a keyword class for creating classes in Python. So this is that keyword. Now we need to define our class name. So I'll say my first class. This is class name. And now we can create a variable called a, and it's going to be equal to 10. So, and please pay attention that class name should start with a capital letter. That's a convention. So this is our very basic class. That means we can now start creating an object or an instance of this class. So let's do that. So I'll say x equals to my first class. That's how you create an object or an instance of a class. So objects and instances are used interchangeably to refer to the same thing. So I'll say print x. So let's check. So you see, so it says this object belongs to my first class. And now if you would like to access this variable, you can say .a. And from an object perspective, this will be a property. Okay, so now it's going to be equal to 10. So now let's discuss a function called init, which all classes have it by default. So init function is always executed when the class is being initialized. So in our case, in this one, we don't have it, and we'll talk about this one later on. Even if we don't have it, it's going to be equal to none. So I'll explain this in a minute. But before, let's create our second class and let's use it init function. So my second class will be a fruit class. So that means once we create that fruit class, we can start creating fruit objects. So I'll say def and init function should have this name. So 2 underscores before and after this init name. So, and by default, this init function should have this self parameter, and I'll explain this in a minute. So then you can specify your own parameters. So I'll say name, price, and then, oops. Now let's create variables. So I'll say self n, name, and then it's going to be self p, it's going to be equal to price. So that's it. So this is my fruit class, and I have here init function. And as I said, this init function should have this self parameter. So let's discuss what's the main role of this init function. So the main role of init function is to assign values to variables or object properties. So from a function perspective, this is a variable, but from a object perspective, this one is property, because once you create an object, you can call this, n and p using dot notation. So that's why it's object property. Okay, so and this self parameter is used to refer to the current instance of the class. So it means self means current instance of this class, and this self is also used to access variables that belong to the class. So now let's create an object of this class. So it's going to be banana, and I will say fruit. And now it's gonna, first one, you don't need to you don't need to refer to the self in the argument. You just need to specify your custom you just need to define your custom properties, or from an object perspective it's gonna be argument. So name will be equal to banana, and then price will be equal to, so maybe we should just say integer and 10. So now if I print banana, and then if I say n, it should print name, and if I say banana dot p, it should print price. So let me show that to you. So you see banana, and then that's price. So in here, so you don't need to pass variable. This can be string, because whatever you pass in here, it's gonna be treated the same inside this function or inside this class. Okay. So if you in the, for instance, price section, if you in the price parameter, if you pass string, it will be treated as a string in here. If you pass, for instance, in here integer, it's gonna be treated as an integer in here. So if it's list, it's gonna be treated as a list. All right. So whatever data type you pass in the argument, it will be treated as the same data type in the class, inside the class. So now let's check. So it's gonna be banana 10. And now if I say, for instance, I can now create as many objects of this class as I want. So I can say, instead of banana, I can say, for instance, cherry. And I just need to rename this to cherry, and the price maybe like $20. So now let's print, instead of banana, I'll say cherry. So it should now print cherry and 20. Okay, so now let's discuss modifying properties of objects. So you can modify properties of objects. So for instance, instead of cherry, you can change that name to something else. So I can say cherry and then I can, make it, for instance, mango. So that will be equal to mango. So now if I say print cherry n, this should be equal to mango. So let me demonstrate that to you. You see, that's how you modify properties of objects. So you can also delete properties of objects by using del keyword. So for instance, if you would like to delete this property, so n property of this object, you can say del, and then let's actually keep this because we can use that one for checking. So I'll say del, and then you need to specify object name and then property name. So now if I say printed, it should throw an error saying that it doesn't exist. So you see, fruit object has no attribute n. So that's how you delete properties of objects. You can also delete an object altogether. If you want to do so, you should use del keyword, but you don't need to specify object property. You just say, you just specify object name, and that's it. So now if I just print it, it says name cherry is not defined because we have just deleted that object in here. Okay, so that's all regarding this video, and we'll continue our discussion on classes in the next one.